All right, let's get down to the finale. Chapter 7, the final chapter of the road to the undisputed heavyweight champion in boxing history. Chapter 7, the WBA regular heavyweight title that was supposed to be known as Chapter 6, but it's Chapter 7, the finale. Guys, for the past several weeks right now, since starting this whole series, I'm actually really happy that I'm finally finishing it. And even though this was not going to be my last episode, I just want to go through it as quickly as I can. Now, all I can say about this is this. We have a lot of championship titles on the line here. And the WBA regular title might be the best way to end this chapter because, like the last video I was trying to make of this podcast, it was 2 hours long. And I had to do a new one. So if you viewers hear some, like, edit cuts or something like that, or if I start cutting footage, cutaways or something, it might be because of I had to cut the videos or even pause it. So just keep that in mind. You'll understand what I mean when I get to this. But yes, we have a lot of title changes. So here's the story. So by 1996, Holyfield defeats Tyson. He gets a rematch by the ear bite. He takes another title defense a year later in 98. His fourth title defense ends in a draw with Lennox Lewis, and we know what happened. So he's the heavyweight champion in the WBA regular title, or as it's the world title. And of course, at this moment in November, he loses against Lennox Lewis, and then Lewis strips the belt. Now, I did have a little bit of information. I did talk about this, but here's the information you viewers do have to know. Even though Lewis would strip the title on April the 12th, 2000, agreeing to take on WBC challenger Michael Grant instead of John Ruiz, and the decision was based, the court was on the basis of the clause, of the rematch clause of mostly the Lewis and Holyfield rematch contract after their first fight, so which was said to Lewis's first bout. So to be in the number one contender, they decided to strip it away. 4 months later, on August the 12th, we would have probably one of the first ever great trilogies in the heavyweight division. A past prime Evander Holyfield would finally get a rematch for the belt against number one challenger from the New England territory. And that's, John Ruiz. Guys, when you look back at this footage, you think to yourself, well, John Ruiz, ever since he got knocked hard by David Tua in less than, under 20 seconds, he got knocked out by David Tua in less than 19 seconds back in 1996 when Tua was 22-0, and he killed John Ruiz. Even though when he suffered his first split decision loss in 93 against Sergey Kovalev and Darnell Nicholson a year later by 2 split decision losses, which still made John Ruiz an interesting contender. But after that loss with David Tua, there's no way. Yes, he had great fights with Tony Tucker, Jimmy Thunder, and pretty much those were the only fights. He did have the North American Boxing Association title he held and won around the time with those fights. But when you look at David Tua, you don't think to yourself he is a worthy champion. He has 3 losses, and he's taken on Evander Holyfield with 4 losses in his career, actually. And but surprisingly, even though Holyfield is 37 and Ruiz is 28, people think this was going to be a really easy fight. Technically, this fight went down the wire quite decently. This fight was so amazing. This fight would have also ended in a draw. These two guys laid out each other like no other man did. And Holyfield, past his prime at 37, proved himself. He went out there and did not give up one bit. But the information doesn't mean that he had to earn it. In the first couple rounds of the fight, they both are studying away from each other. They're hurting each other, and surprisingly, and guys, I don't want to talk too much about the trilogy because that's not the video of the information about this video, but But when you look at this, John Ruiz handled the first couple rounds decently, and then we had interesting moments about round 3 where two judges scored 10-8, which was Dwayne Ford and Dave Moretti. They scored the bout 10-8 for Holyfield, while the other judge, Fernando, had it 10-9 for him. And even though I had it 10-9, but for reasons why the score was a 10-8, we'll never know. But yeah, Holyfield managed to handle himself, even though Ruiz did hurt him, got him in round 4 and round 5. And Holyfield came back strong in round 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12. So you calculate that is him probably winning 7 rounds. But there are times that Holyfield and Ruiz, you could almost say Ruiz might have won 6 rounds. He might have won 5. And I actually thought this fight was a draw. And probably it was a 115-113 for Holyfield or a 114 draw. All we know is those two judges that gave it a 10-8 in the 3rd round for Holyfield, their score was 114-113, both favoring Holyfield. While the other judge, Fernando Vizo, was 116-112, favorite for Holyfield. So the match ended in the unanimous decision, but if that score for the two judges did score a 10-8 in the 3rd round, this would have been a majority draw. And when you look at that, like the information-wise, it is crazy because even though, like, there was a lot of interesting problems going on because Ruiz, it was really interesting to understand because it was a pretty tough fight. And even though Holyfield received $5 million for his for the fight mostly, and Ruiz was considered legitimate, but like I said before, with his 4th loss already, and ever since his loss against David Tua, no one could think he deserved it. But nevertheless, there were some controversies that he might have won the fight, but I think the fight would have been a win for Holyfield or a draw for that problem. And then you come to the fight in March the 3rd, 2021, or 2001. And Ruiz steps out, and he finally gets the upper advantage on beating Holyfield. He got him really easy in round 2, dominated round 4, and dominated round 8, and he dominated the last 2 rounds with bangs. There were times that round 1 was an interesting, decent, close round of affair, and there were other rounds that were even at the time. Don't forget, round 11 was a score of a 10-8 because of Ruiz. And fun fact, one judge scored it a 10-7, which was Patricia, scored a 10-7 11th round for Ruiz, while Chuck and Stanley, 2 other judges, scored 10-8. So that right there is a little bit confused, but nevertheless, the scores were on 116-110, 115-111, 114-111, all favoring, unanimous by Ruiz. Ruiz is the last ever New England champion from the Northeast to ever win a heavyweight champion. And surprisingly, he would defend that belt in December the 15th, 2001. And even though the scores I had, 114 and 113, in that fight favored John Ruiz easily, the last fight proved to be a huge problem. Because Holyfield there were some even times in rounds where the first couple rounds were there and a few other rounds here or there. Holyfield, like round 1 and round 2 and round 8, 6, 9, 12. And there were a lot of other close rounds here or there. And for Holyfield, I had it 116 to 112 for Holyfield at the time. One judge had it for Holyfield as well, just like I did. Same judge, same scorecard, which was Julie Letterman. Another guy named Don O'Neill had 115 to 113 for Ruiz. But Tom Kasamarek had 114 even. So the fight ended with decision draw. The trilogy was pretty good. But what about John Ruiz's title reigns? Well, this is the information that's crazy. Later, the next year in July 27, 2002, he defeats Kirk Johnson which was a pre-battle 10-round fight. The judges had a lot even scores. Even Harold Letterman had it 85-84, favoring it for Johnson after 9 rounds. But the fight did have some interesting problems because there were times that, like for instance, in the 4th round, Johnson was interrupted from the wrestling with low blows, and Joe Cortez, the referee at the time, didn't take a point or anything. He did give John Ruiz time to regain his breath due to that low blow situation and everything else. Like it was a horrid fight to watch. It was like Johnson was putting a lot of punches in that fight, but it was an even fight. They were both landing even punches for each other, but ending in a round 10 disqualification when Kirk just couldn't handle itself. Yeah. And then you come to March the 1st, 2003, and Roy Jones Jr. at 193 pounds at the time, he was at light heavyweight. He steps up to world heavyweight and defeats John Ruiz. Roy Jones Jr. becomes WBA heavyweight champion, defeats John Ruiz. And you know what happened next? Roy Jones would vacate the title to stay at light heavyweight. He would vacate it later in February the 24th, 2004, a full year after he won the belt. So what happened during that time? Well, simple. Hasim Rotman and Ruiz fought for the inaugural WBA interim world heavyweight title on December the 13th, 2003. Yeah, the WBA interim belt was debuted in 2003. About 11 years before Luis Ortiz fought for the title in 2014. The fight was uneventful. It was an easy win for John Ruiz. And then in April the 17th, 2004, he fought for the regular title. And guys, there's some interesting information I'm going to read about the history, about the WBA. And because, guys, at this point, this is when you start to understand the WBA was more different back then, which is actually known as fragmented championships. But I'll get to that until the end of this podcast. John Ruiz fights against Frez Oquendo. And wow. Yeah. After talking about Frez Oquendo and how he was robbed of his WBC title, he lost an IBF world title shot against Chris Bird in September of 2003, months before this fight. The fight was even, right down to the wire. 2 judges had 96-94 for Ruiz, and 1 judge had even. And surprisingly, John Ruiz, considering at this moment, I wouldn't say, considering he managed to handle himself, he did a good job. He won the fight fair and square. Also, guys, this was also the same night where Chris Bird took on Andrew Galata, and Andrew Galata was robbed when Chris Bird, after he defeated Frez Oquendo in September last year at this point. That same night on April the 17th at Madison Square Garden, where Ruiz defeated Frez Oquendo, Chris Bird defeated Andrew Galata. Yeah. So, yeah, when you look at that, to say, Frez Oquendo's career at this moment, after this, he would take a couple years off, never fight until 2006, lose against Holyfield, lose against James Toney for the IBA World Heavyweight title, which is another title in 2008, which he lost. He lost against interesting fighters like John Mark Mormick, Oliver McCall, past prime in 2010, and yeah. Even his best win in 2013 was Derek Ross when he was past his prime. But before we get to 2014, because there's going to be a lot of funny information about Frez Oquendo after his last fight. But we'll get to that later. As for Andrew Galata and his loss against Chris Bird and how people were surprised that he proved himself that night, but got robbed the same way how Okendo might have gotten robbed by Chris Bird and such. They decided to give him a second chance. So he fought for the WBA champion on November the 13th, 2004 against John Ruiz. This fight, ladies and gentlemen, is history, and this is one interesting fight. Now, guys, I ignored all the other fights about this or that, but this is one fight I can't ignore. I love this fight. First of all, guys, I'm just going to talk about the 12-round fight before I get to the serious topic here. It's going to be interesting. So like I said, Ruiz is trying to get to a second title defense reigns. Andrew GLOAT is trying to recover. He's trying to become first Polish fighter to become heavyweight champion, and to this day, we haven't had a Polish fighter since. Andrew GLOAT comes in, and the first round was so crazy. The first round starts so crazy because John Ruiz was attacking Andrew GLOAT like crazy. He hits him into the ropes. The referee is going, like, the referee has a lot of fun highlights to be involved in this fight. And John Ruiz's coach and trainer also has a few awesome highlights to talk about in this fight as well. Yeah, I'm sure you viewers know what I'm about to talk about. I know I ignored so much of the title reigns and the title defenses of John Ruiz, even though the story has nothing to do with the WBA in 2000, but I really, in the decade of the 2000s, but I really want to talk about this. So the first round starts out, like I said, the first round started out, GLOAT and Ruiz handle each other, and they were both handling each other really bad. You can already tell it was turning into a bloody affair. And even though Ruiz won this round easily, the end of the round is when both of them punch on each other near one of the corner ropes, and he's blocking Andrew GLOAT from escaping. He gets clinched. The bell rings. And out of nowhere, the referee's trying to tell them to back up. The fight's over. The round's over. And John decides to throw punches at him, punch him through. And just as he actually throws a punch on Andrew GLOAT after the bell rang, I crap you not, I look back at this footage, and Ruiz's trainer, Norman Stone, does not hesitate to climb out of the ring and walk straight towards Andrew's trainer, grabs his left hand, grabbing part of GLOAT's trainer's jacket, and threatens to punch him with his left. With his right, if that makes any sense. It was so crazy. And it stated that, and of course, one of the commissioners tries to back him up. The referee can't do anything about it because he's trying to stop GLOAT and Ruiz from hitting each other because the round's over. This right here is crazy. Now, at this moment, I thought to myself, okay, John Ruiz should have been penalized for that or something, because that was just disrespectful. You could tell that there should have been a deductive or even a penalty or a warning at that time. So we come to round two, and Ruiz is charging after him. He charges after GLOAT, and then he charges after him again after the clinch. And out of nowhere, GLOAT throws this amazing, out of nowhere, right punch, drops down. He drops Ruiz down. Like that quick. It was so crazy. And then he knocks him out again. He throws another right combination, carries him to the corner rope, brings him down. The referee didn't penalize him when he tried to throw a pounding right on him. And Ruiz tried to tell him he was rabbit punched or something. It was crazy. The round comes to an end with not a lot of crazy stuff. until Ruiz tried to clinch GLOAT to the ropes again, only for Ruiz to go under the middle top rope and get stuck, which is crazy. And then we come to round 3, and round three was bad enough. Like, they clinch. What happens here is crazy. In the third round, John throws a left punch. He gets his arm stuck on top of GLOAT's shoulder. And GLOAT goes for a pounding on his head. What happens later? Ruiz throws his own on the back of his head, and the referee deducts him 1 point. GLOAT finishes off the round with a bang, and at this moment, with only a few points here or there, GLOAT already has a multitude of points. Well, not really, because in the third round, GLOAT won. In the fourth round is when he was penalized, when Ruiz was penalized. So let me correct myself. It was round 4 I was talking about. So round 3 was just a normal this or that, got caught on the ropes. Wait, I think John Ruiz got caught onto the middle rope in the third round. And then in the fourth round, he hit GLOAT in the back of the head and was deducted a point. GLOAT won round 2 and round 3 and round 4, and not to spoil it, like, he did won round 5, and I did believe round 7 was a round for him. And at that moment, you think to yourself, why didn't GLOAT do anything else? Because it's like even round 6 and round 8 were also other interesting rounds that would have been GLOAT rounds, or even Ruiz rounds, because, and even round 9, round 10 would be Ruiz rounds, and round 9 and round 11 would also be a GLOAT round, in my opinion. And round 11, Ruiz would finish it off. So when looking at that, yeah, I just, like, the scorecard, in my opinion, like, GLOAT won 6 rounds, took 3 points away from Ruiz, which means the score would have been 114 to 111. Definitely a GLOAT win. For reasons why a lot of the judges, guys, I'm still trying to find judges' scorecards, because even on BoxRec, I can't find the scorecards anywhere. But yeah, what makes this moment interesting, that in round 5, before round 5, I love that trainer Stone gives him water. He tells him, "You okay?" Like, let me explain. I love how Stoney gives water to Ruiz there. And then he says, "Okay." Instead of waiting for him to respond, he drinks the water that he gave to Ruiz. He drank out of Ruiz's bottle. He says, "Okay." Oh, dude, that is ridiculous. If you viewers watch guys, I'm sure a lot of people can watch the highlights of the cornermen moments, and each round ends with the corners and the trainers talking to their fighters, because there's a lot to Stone. Like, guys, when you watch Norman Stone and just how it was ridiculous. But yeah, and in the next several rounds was all crazy. Like, they're winning great fights to each other in round 6. And guys, what even makes it dumb is that every time a clinch happens quickly, the referee goes, "Ho ho 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 ho," or else he'll just say, "Oh, let him out, let him out, let him out. Hey, don't take those shots, don't take those shots." Like the referee is trying his best. The referee, there's also times where GLOAT has his armpit onto Ruiz's head, and Ruiz is under him. Or even time, like, there was a lot of clinches in this fight. It was ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous. There was just a lot of, there was times that GLOAT wasn't putting a lot of pressure into Ruiz in this fight. They were clinching a lot. Like I said before, I love the referee saying, no, let him go. It's like the referee and Norman Stoney were the ones that were the spotlight of this entire fight. There was one round where mostly GLOAT did hit him in the back of the head, but he didn't penalize him. So there were times that GLOAT would have been penalized. There would have been times that the clinches would have made, because there were times that there were a lot of clinches for both that mostly Ruiz would have almost been penalized or anyone else would have been penalized. Like when you viewers watch it, like Ruiz did manage to come back and start dominating some rounds. Like there was one moment when they were near the the end of the rope and the bell rang, but they still kept throwing multiple punches, and the referee just tackled both of them to push them out of the way, which was crazy. And then a second later, when the referee did it, Ruiz didn't hesitate to throw a punch from GLOAT, which at this point penalized him. Like I almost think to myself that should have been a penalty point for Ruiz. For reasons why, we'll never know. Oh yeah, and by the way, when that round was finished, Ruiz would go back to his trainer and get talked to a bald guy, because a bald guy would be talking to Ruiz the entire fight. Why? Because Norman Stoney was a bad boy. He was a bad boy. So, guys, when you watch the corners, I'm not going to spoil it for you viewers. You viewers watch this fight yourself and watch videos of Norman Stoney and the Ruiz and GLOAT fight. It's going to be fun. He comes on, so this is how Norman Stoney got kicked out of the corner. He was a bad boy. He was cursing so much at the referee, saying so much, I'll sue you for every penny you got, you damn it. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you. No, why not penalize him? Norman Stone was hilarious. The last moment that got him kicked out of the corner of the ring and got sent to the locker room is when in one of the rounds where Ruiz had to put tape on his glove. There was a lot of clinches, and the referee, Randy Newman, no relation to the artist, gets on and tries to tell him to put tape on Ruiz's glove. And Norman is already tired on, so he gives Newman duct tape, and he looks at it and he says, put it on yourself. And then Norman just cusses the one word, and the commentators are laughing. Newman heard him, and he says, all right, you're gone. And I'm surprised that the fight was not oh man. Norman is losing his mind. The people, and the referee is telling him to get him out. So the commissioners, securities are trying to get him out. He said, I'll sue you for every penny you got. I'm going to sue you. I'll sue you. He just can't. He's just so dumb. But the craziest moment, he walks towards Don King, and he's telling him, this fight is fixed. Damn it, this damn fight's fixed. And Don King, the only thing his reaction is, he's not smiling, he's not frowning. After Norman walks away from him, he turns to his left and just, he's not frowning, but he's not smiling. He just has that straight face of, hey, what do you want me to do? Dude, you do not walk up to a promoter like that, like Don King. But Norman had the balls to do it. And at the time, during the last halfway part of the fight, he is cussing so hard at the fight. They put a small TV set, and a camera crew tells them to go to the dressing room and film Norman's reaction of the fight in a small TV set. He's losing his mind. He gets up off his blanket. During one of the moments where the round is over, he's already talking, and the camera's up to him. And also the camera does cut to the camera in the dressing room, and it also shows on TV, and Norman is just talking, telling him, this referee is doing nothing, he's not penalizing GLOAT, he's not doing this. Yeah, and I'm going to sue you for everything you got. The last rounds of the fight were, again, there was a lot of clinches, and at the end of the day, guys, the last rounds of the fight were just GLOAT win. Well, GLOAT won the 11th round in my opinion, but from round 9, 10, and 12 were the last rounds for Ruiz. like I said, I had it 6 rounds. Even though both guys won rounds. And by the way, before I end this video, there was one moment in the fight where GLOAT did manage to throw a left. He wraps around him. He wraps around Ruiz, and then he hits the ground with his knees. The odds of GLOAT, when I saw that, I was like, oh, I thought GLOAT was going to pound him. But no, GLOAT got tired at the end, but still. And there was a moment where after the bell rang, GLOAT threw another punch on his head and he hit the ground. I was shocked that Randy didn't call that knockdown. And you want to know what's crazy? Norman's other trainer, Baldy, I'm going to call Ruiz's trainer Baldy, the second trainer. He comes on, he grabs Ruiz, he hugs him, and Randy puts his hands up and said, "That's the end of the bell." And Ruiz's trainer, Baldy, he's going, "The bell! The bell!" I can't understand a damn word coming out of his mouth right now. He's going, "Bo-bo!" English. Can any of these people speak English on Ruiz's trainer? Like, Ruiz's second trainer is cussing back at the referee as well. And the commissioners are on Ruiz's trainer and corner, and they're trying to make sure all this is going on. Why is this fight still going? The final rounds, and there was one moment, like, it was crazy. I was surprised that wasn't a knockdown. If that was a knockdown in that round at the time, if they did count that as a knockdown during that time in the fight, oh man, like, I'm sure the point scores would have been a draw. This fight would have been a draw because it would have been a 10-8 due to the judges, because after 12 rounds, 2 judges had 114 and 111, the other had 113 and 112, all favoring Ruiz. Why? And it was so crazy. Like I said before, guys, round 11, guys, even though GLOAT scored round 11, but if they counted that as a knockdown in round 11, 10-8, the score would have been 112 to 112, scored by Frank Lombardi, because his score was 113 to 112, and if that was a knockdown, it would have been 112 even. The other 2 judges, it would have been 113 to 111 for both of them. Oscar Perez and Tom Schreck, the fight would have won for Ruiz either way at 113 to 111, but man, if that was a knockdown, even if he scored a knockdown in any other round from round 9, 10, or 12, or how lucky it would have been, who knows? Like I said before, guys, this was a big upset, and after they announced the winner of the fight, and by the way, Harold Lederman had it 113 to 112 for GLOAT. I had 114 to 111. What are you talking about? So the fight ends. Buffer goes on to the announce, tells them the winner, John Ruiz, and the camera cuts to Norman with his hands in the air. Yeah! Yeah! I knew he was gonna win. Suck my ass, you knew he was gonna win. You said you were gonna sue them for every penny you got. And by the way, I tried to find information if Norman Stone did sue the people after this fight, but I couldn't find information, so let me know in the comments. But guys, this fight was robbed. This is the main reason why Polish boxers might never become heavyweight champion, because of bullcrap like this. This cost Andrew GLOAT's career. Andrew GLOAT used up all his energy to try to win this fight, and no matter how close he was, it just ended for no reason. Andrew GLOAT's career would die after this, because later in 2005, he suffered a first-round knockdown in the WBO title against Lamont Brewster. He came back in 2007, defeated Kevin McBride, but then he lost against Ray Austin in 2008, Tom Adamick in 2009, and 2013 was his last fight, and by loss. And yeah. As for Andrew Golota, 2005 was the dumbest year, which he would lose against James Toney, which would later on April the 30th, 2005. No. I'm sorry. I mean May the 17th, 2005, about 2.5 weeks after the fight in Madison Square Garden on April the 30th, 2005, which was the fight of James Toney and John Ruiz. But on May the 17th is when Ruiz regained the recognition of WBA champion, even when he lost a 12-round fight easily by Toney. Why? Well, considering the fight did went on interesting, Ruiz was knocked down in round 7, and the original by decision, and Ruiz announced a short-lived retirement after the bout, which didn't last until 10 days. Lol. Which I'm sure there had been a reason, because 11 days after the fight, on May the 11th, following the bout, Toney tested positive for a banned substance that changed to a no contest due to the NYSAC on Wednesday, May the 11th. Yeah, one day after Ruiz announced his retirement, he was granted the belt. 7 days later, or 6 days later. Yeah. It's so ridiculous. And it's even more ridiculous because by this month of December of 2005, Nikolai from Russia, 42-0, would demolish John Ruiz, and that was it. And man, oh man, this is the moment where the WBA gets dumber by the minute. So here's the information, ladies and gentlemen, that we know. Most of we guys, Nikolai value as title defenses, I don't want to talk about. Owen Beck from Jamaica lost a couple fights in 2005 and 4 during the time when he lost heavyweight title eliminators at the time for WBC and IBF title eliminators. And even though he defeated Darnell Wilson, which he was a prime fighter back then, and I'm sure you know, the guy that knocked out David Nino Rodriguez, the hype job guy in 2013. But, yeah, nothing much for Owen Beck, because on June the 3rd, 2006, Owen Beck rated number 12 in the WBA. He had no rights to be in this title picture, and Nikolai demolished him. What's even worse is that come October of 2006, he would take on, Nikolai would take on Monty Barrett, a guy that, like I said, he was the one that defeated Owen Beck for the WBC and IBF title eliminator in 2005. And of course, like I said before, Owen Beck lost another fight that same year against Ray Austin for the IBF number 2 eliminator spot. But yeah, I would say though, this fight ended a travesty. It ended with nothing to talk about. Like, Nikolai was an okay fighter, but Monty was rated number 10. He was even rated in the WBA in June, but until July, he was rated number 10. Interesting. Here's the thing. Now, I'm not going to say that Nikolai's title defenses weren't that much to talk about, but yet again, it did generate some interesting ratings because keep this in mind, guys. Keep this in mind. Let's break it down. So, in December 17, 2005, Nikolai becomes the tallest and heaviest heavyweight fighter, or even boxer, the heaviest boxer and the tallest boxer to ever become world heavyweight champion, or even a world champion in boxing. Like, have you ever seen a 7-foot cruiserweight before? I know I haven't, but yeah, Nikolai was 7 foot tall and 324 pounds at the time when he won the title. And man, oh man, it was actually pretty interesting. The fight generated a 7.53 million view rating at the time, and it was also involved by ARD with a 41.3 market share. Now, ARD is a public service German broadcasting company, and by the way, these fights took place in Germany during Nikolai's title defense, so keep this in mind. It was maintained on TV station known as Das Erste, which stands in English is the first. But I don't know German that much, but that's what it says. So this was mostly work for Wilfred Sarwin, the promoter from Sarwin Event Promotion. So keep that in mind. So he's already involved in fights. They did go to America to take on Monty Barrett. But on January 2007 is when he took on Jamil McQueen. This is the dumbest part. McQueen was ranked number 9 as contender, but he was unranked by any organized fight before this fight. Fun fact, this is also the first heavyweight title fight taking place in Switzerland. And also, this also breaks the record with the combined weight of 590.5 pounds, or 0.6 pounds, which is the heaviest fight in a title belt in boxing history, which is crazy. Because Nikolai, 322.25 pounds, takes on Jamil, 268.25 pounds. So, yeah. And the fight ends in round 3 when McQueen suffered a injury of a kneecap in round 3. At this moment, 46-0, Nikolai gets a taste of what he deserved. He takes on... he was already 3 fights away from tying Marciano's record of 49-0. And then comes this guy from Kazakhstan, or Uzbekistan, named Ruslan Chagayev. And this guy, out of nowhere, steps into this ring. This fight drew 7.57 million views on the first of 39.3 market share during the time. This is what's crazy. John Ruiz wins the fight and by majority decision, and he comes out as a hero of Uzbekistan. And you want to know how much he got respected for winning this fight against a giant of a friggin' Ivan Drago? I'll tell you. Ruslan Chavez describing his arrival to Uzbekistan after becoming world heavyweight champion. This is what he wrote. I was welcomed as a national hero. When I was a kid, I saw Soviet films about how astronauts were welcomed to Moscow. But who would have thought I would have received similar treatment? One day in my home, at the ladder of the plane that brought us to Tashkent, a red carpet was laid down. The amount of people that were at the airport was crazy. I was put in the government's cabriolet and taken to the presidential residence. Along the road were dozens of people that formed a corridor and were chanting my name. All this time, to be honest, I was in some kind of a numbness, because I have expected something like this. I never expected something like this is what he meant to say, especially since it was 11 p.m. The prime minister took him to his presidential place, and it was 11 p.m. at the time. The mayor of Tashkent, the Minister of Sports, and many of the government officials came to the residence for a gala dinner in honor of my victory. The next day, I was accepted by the President Islam Karimov. He awarded me the Order of Outstanding Merit. My promoter, Klaus Peter Cole, received the Jazorat Bravery Medal. My manager, Taimaz Niazov, received the Shurat, the Gory Medal. Then we all laid flowers at the monument to the independence and humanism, met with children from sports schools, and in the evening, a grandiose concert was held at the stadium of the National Bank of Uzbekistan. I was also given keys to Diu Laseti. These are produced at a joint Uzbek Korean factory in Azerbaijan. Shit. I couldn't even get to my house because I was taken straight to the residence from the airport. They explained that if they took me home, people would simply tear me to pieces. There were too many people who wanted to congratulate me on my victory. Wow. That's a mouthful. So technically, everything is crazy. Nikolai would take on Sariya Lyakovic in 2008 in February, went for the WBA title eliminator, even though a few months ago he won the NABA title against John Francisco Bergeron in 2007, 5 months after his loss against Ruswin. Ruswin, on the other hand, managed to hold himself great. He defeated John Ruiz in November of 2006 by split decision, which gave him this title shot. And his title reign is, how should I say it? Interesting. In January, he takes on Matt Skeleton. Matt Skeleton was rated number 6 in WBO in October, number 5 in November. But in October and November of 2007, he was ranked number 15. Yeah. Weird. Because you know why? Because Skeleton was unranked in the WBA in September, but then in October and November, he was number 15. He was given a spot. You want to know who number 15 was? Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield was number 15 in WBA, and someone gave it to Matt. And the fight was nothing much to say. Ruslan won, and this is the moment which made the WBA super belt to become part of the major in heavyweight boxing in the next couple years. Ruslan would have an injury in July the 3rd, 2008, where they were going to have a rematch with him and Nikolai, because Nikolai got his title eliminator shot. But then, days before and so until the fight, Ruslan tore his Achilles tendon and was declared championship in recess. Yeah. So, what happened? Well, they tried to offer some matches for Ruslan to fight this or fight that. Nikolai, well, for him, he managed to get lucked on. Because by August the 30th, a month and a half later, he had a rematch with John Ruiz, and he won the fight easily. Not good. But you want to know what makes this worse? First of all, I just like to ignore the Carl Davis-Drummond fight in February the 7th, 2009 with him and Ruslan, because that fight ended in accidental headbutt clash of Chagev getting cut, and after 6 rounds, and he barely defended the belt. And speaking about that WBA World Heavyweight title was on the line, even though it was a championship of recess. It was a 1-year layoff, but fans at the time and the bout was recognized as championship at the time. And also, Carl was rated number 10 in the WBA, but number 11 in November. But for that, he would fight 4 months later against Vladimir Klitschko, and well, he managed to hold himself. Ruslan WBA title was not on the line during that fight with Vladimir Klitschko because his championship recess would be gone after that. Because at this moment, you have to understand, you viewers have to understand, Nikolai is already the championship, so what's the point of having him being championship of recess? But here's the problem. Nikolai's last win was against Evander Holyfield in Switzerland. Remember when I said Sultan Ibragimov defeated Holyfield in 2007 for WBO title in 12 rounds? Well, Holyfield was unranked in the fight in all organizations at this point until December 20, 2008. And you want to know what's crazy? Guys, this fight was so uneventful. This 12-round fight was so uneventful. What did we saw? This fight was so bad. Holyfield, he fought, Holyfield was a past prime guy. He was in his 40s. He was too old. He was a short guy taking on a tall monster. And you want to know what his strategy was? All Holyfield did was bounce around, moving from side to side, staying 10 feet from Valuev all night, coming forward a couple times per fight, and given that Valuev, who looked like a statue in the fight, which Dan Rafael did say this in an article of ESPN 2 days after the fight, he called it the giant. Valuev did little to deserve victory over Holyfield. Yeah, this fight was a controversial win for Nikolai. And you want to know how old? Holyfield was at this time? He was 46 years old, and he was taking on a monster. 6'2", 214 pounds, taking on a 7-foot giant, 310-pound fighter. And he handled him good. He dominated every, he won several rounds. I gave him 116, mostly I gave him 117 to 111. I can't even talk straight. I gave Holyfield 117 to 111, and two judges had it 116, 112 for Nikolai. What? 115 to 114? What? And 114 even. Dude, here's the problem about this fight. This made Nikolai the biggest giant freak of nature since Giant Gonzalez in WWF in 93. Considering how much of a giant he was, but how little capable he could fight in a ring because he couldn't sell bumps and he didn't know how to take as much of how bad his fighting was, and he didn't know how to speak English. Nikolai is one championship boxer that I want to forget. You first have to understand one thing. Like Dan Rafael said, a humiliating night in boxing, ending the decade horribly, stunking up so much. Specifically one, the WBA never should have approved a 46-year-old fighter to have a title in the first place when he lost against Sultan Ibragimov more than a year ago. 2, the fight was horrible. One of the worst heavyweight title fights in history with less contact than an episode of Dancing with the Stars. Ouch. 3, the decision was so atrocious and so scandalous that it made Holyfield's gift draw in his Lewis 1 fight, Lennox Lewis 1 fight they had, 99, look like a competent ruling of judges. Oh, wow. And by the way, guys, information did stated on December 29th, 9 days after the fight, the WBA announced that it was ordered a panel of judges to study the video of the fight. So WBA said it, which is the WBA that said, the WBA said they always care about the respect their fans and the media's opinion. 7.42 million views on German of Sarwin Promotions saw bullcrap. And at this moment, they were going to offer a rematch for Holyfield. But that's what happened until November the 7th, 2009, the pay-per-view David versus Goliath. British fighter David Haye dominated, laid every single punch on Nikolai, and won by majority decision. And Nikolai never boxed again. I'm pissed. And guys, I do not like talking about... Guys, I want to skip David Haye's resume so much. Here's the thing. Okay, guys, here's the thing. So, as for John Ruiz, Here's the thing you viewers have to understand about John Ruiz. His boxing career is dead. He won a couple fights, one in 2007, defeated JayMetal McQueen for the WBC heavyweight title eliminator in March of 2008, but instead almost 6 months later, he took on Nikolai for the WBA title. Why? I don't know. He lost. A year later, he fought against a nobody, only to have this match against David Haye. This match was so atrocious. Guys, John Ruiz was past his prime. Yes, I know. Guys, the WBA rated him as number one, was a number one challenger from November and December during the time when they ranked this fight to be on the line for this title fight with him and David Haye. But this was, no. John Ruiz was past his prime. He never boxed again after this loss. He got knocked down twice, late in round 5, once in round 6. Haye did had a nick to his right eyebrow in the first round. Haye was deducted points for hitting in the back of Ruiz's head in round 1, which, yeah, it was a sloppy affair, and it was an uneventful title defense again, and it would get worse. Because then, in November 13th, 2010, we had 2 British boxers. After 16 years of the last great title fights of British boxers fighting each other, they were going to see another one against David Haye, Cruiserweight Champion, Unified Champion, taking on 2000 gold medalist Audrey Harrison, also former WBF World Boxing Foundation heavyweight title. This guy was a bum. Even when he won the title in 2004, his loss against Danny Williams by split decision and Dominic Gunn in 2006 wasn't much. His huge loss against Michael Sprout, considering how he knocked Sprout down, Michael Sprout in round 1, only for Sprout to get his butt back in round 2 and he lost. And then lose against Martin Rogan. No, Audrey Harrison was a bust. And even in 2009, he did manage to enter a prize fighting tournament, which he won all 3 fights and became tournament winner. And then he had a rematch with Michael Sprout and won by around 12 with a left hook to the head, knocking down Sprout in the first minute of the final round. And then they got him this title shot because of that EBU European heavyweight win. But even during the time when this fight was getting generated popularity, David Haye was already calling this a mismatch fight. And while Audrey was replying, it's not going to be a mismatch. How little were we going to see? Guys, the first round of this fight was so out of it. The earliest news of hitting it at the publicity of the possibility of this fight being made was in late of June. And man, the fight was confirmed until September the 7th. Audrey Harrison was rated number 13 in the WBA in the month of July and August before the fight was made. Oh, Harrison was unranked in the WBA in the month of June. Oh my gosh. David Haye, you are the worst heavyweight champion in the the worst one-time heavyweight champion. Oh God, I hate talking about this. The first round of this fight, they both study each other. Audrey Harrison is standing like a statue, like Nikolai is. He's not moving. David Haye is studying his punching. He's backing him up, but they're both. The first 3 minutes of the first round, man, God, it's And then the second round, same thing. They're not punching each other. There's nothing, no contact. In the first minute and a half of the fight, the referee, Louis Padden, steps in, tells them to make a fight out of it, but they still don't. And then in round 3, around a minute or so, David Haye decides to attack him, throws barrages of punches. And there was a time where Audrey Harrison did manage to throw a single straight jab at Haye, which was the only jab he landed. Some people said that he landed 2 jabs. In BoxRec, he said he landed 2 jabs. SMB Boxing said Harrison landed a single jab. Even commentators, other people say he landed a single jab. I don't know who's telling the truth. People say Audrey landed a single jab, or people said, like, BoxRec says he landed 2 jabs. I don't know. All we know is the total amount of punches in this 3-round fight. Harrison only throwed 28 jabs, 0 power punches, and only landed 2. David Haye threw 91 punches, 61 power punches, and 30 jabs. 22 power punches were landed, and 5 jabs. He knocked him down in that 3rd round. Audrey got back up and got him again, and the fight was over before the 2-minute mark. And then during interview, David Haye came in and he said that he can throw punches whenever if he chose to. That's why this fight went to the third round. I put a lot of money in the 3rd round. What the hell are you talking about? Oh, this is the worst. It's so bad. And guys, I'm going to stop this video before it gets broken, but this is information-wise. So the information stated that this fight stated that days after the fight, David Haye stated why he said that, putting money in the 3rd round, stating, this is what he said. He said that when you're doing something with your parents, your friends, and telling them what you're going to do, it feels like it was his money. He didn't say that he put money on the round, but he told people to bet on him to win the 3rd round because a lot of people put a lot of money in the 3rd round. If that's the case, why not make the fight interesting? He should have landed a few interesting hard punches in the 1st round and probably hurt him in the 2nd round, wait, and then probably finish him off. How would you know that you were going to finish the 3rd round off that quickly? How would you not know that Haye was going to survive that 3rd round? By the way, also, Audrey Harrison's purse would be on hold because of how horrible his performance was. But, of course, he would get his full amount fight purse, and that's it. By 2012, he came back, won a fight, lost against David Price by 1st-round knockout. And then 2013, he went back prize fighting tournament, become a 2-time prize fighting tournament again. 2 months later, he lost against Deontay Wilder in the 1st round, and that's it. David Haye, well, he had his match, fought for the WBA super belt. He lost it after he lost against Klitschko, and that was it. Yeah. It is what it is. So guys, by the way, I'm going to stop this phone. I'm going to record another video, so I'll be back in a second.